guy, Kenny Hyder. We're going to be talking through the Cognizant Classic, formerly known as the Honda Classic, this week. And this is my favorite part of the week because golf has been the one thing that's been profitable for the last month. Every week, been winning, so can't complain. Haven't quite hit the big one, coming close every week. It's just not quite getting there. And NBA has been pretty rough. So we may get some news during the NBA during the show. I might adjust a little bit. If you guys have questions about that, feel free to pop them in. We're doing this at a funny time because we have no sheets today. But Kenny, great to have you. Have you taken a look at this slate? Any overall thoughts before we get into the tiers and all that stuff?
Yeah, I've taken too much time. I thought we were going to record this morning, so I woke up and started doing things, and then got dragged in all day, kind of throughout the day. But it's a mixed slate, and just because of all of the water hazards, it's kind of like I don't even really want to be that committed to anything this week, just because it's so in the realm of possibility that anyone that you would roster at a high rate could just take themselves out of it and on one hole. So it's kind of like a dangerous week, I feel like.
Right. Yeah, I feel like that's a really good point. And a lot of the good names that you're hearing, like, using just Benny On as an example, is a guy I like and who seems like a good play, but at the same time, that guy gets himself into trouble quite a bit. So
right.
makes you a little nervous this week. This is not going to be quite. It's going to be better. I think it's going to play lower. I think the lower score, it'll be lower than it's been in the past. But I still think it's going to be, it's there.
I don't know. Because they changed. I can't remember which one, but one of the holes to from a par 4 to a par 5. But like it might be there might be someone might be able to put up a score, but they're also. I think this is one of those weeks where someone random might just run away with it too. You might have a guy going into Saturday that's I guess we saw it last week. Knapp had a 5 or 6 stroke lead going into Sunday, and then just won by 2 or something like that. So we might have some more weird run like that.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we'll use that sort of as a reference point for pricing tiers and whatnot. Let's just grab this really quickly, and there you are. All right. Okay, so going through the tiers here. And look, obviously we have Rory, who's sort of in a tier of his own, but we're going to talk about the 10K plus plays. I'll let you start it off here, and where do you stand with obviously what's going to be a very chalky Rory? He does stand out price wise. There's a lot of plays in the low 6Ks, low 5Ks that I think are interesting enough to where we can gamble on them, and it'd be easy to get him. He's won at this course before, even though he's also had some rough outings. What are your thoughts on the 10K plus range? Who do you see yourself being over and underweight on, I guess?
So, because of what I was saying about how it's possible that any single, even Rory could, take himself out of contention, on a single hole. I think as far as this range is concerned, I'm not really interested all that much. I just think I'm this week, I'm also not, I'm not going to play as big. I'm going to play more into a smaller field tournament. And then I'm going to, play the mini max and kind of experiment, but I'm not really going to, be too committed to any one thing. But really my, in my hand construction, my concern is really mostly about just trying to figure out how to get a 6 of 6. And one of these guys might help you get a 6 of 6, but I think there's so much more help that you can gain from not playing anyone in this range, and stacking the lower 9 and, higher 7K range and in between. So that's kind of my thoughts on the range in general. Rory's great. I the same way that I didn't need Finau last week at 12K. I also don't need Rory. I mean, obviously Rory's a much better golfer, but if he's going to be 30% owned, or if he's going to be 20% owned, he's got to win, and you got to stack him with, a 6K range guy that's going to make the cut and top 10 or something like that. You know what I mean? So I'm not really interested in this range at all. If I had to pick one guy out of this range, it would be Russell Henley.
Yeah, so I think that Henley is going to be, I'm actually surprised that he's not a little more popular. I think maybe it's just like a price shock thing with him because I honestly
Yeah,
thought he was going to
absolutely.
be pretty
And
popular.
I think there's so much price shock this week. If we think about, so I pulled up in my laptop earlier, a couple hours ago, which I hadn't opened all week since Sunday when I was last, watching golf and had thought at one point thought I had a point at a sweat going into Sunday, but opened up my laptop to one of my live lineups from last week, and it had Olsen and Jaeger and Van Royen and all these guys that were so expensive last week that cost nothing this week.
Right.
And so, it doesn't make sense to like pay $10,000 for Russell Henley. But, that's what I'm saying is I think that I don't really need a whole lot of this range, but if I had to, hone in on one guy, maybe him, I don't know.
That makes sense to me. I'm going to go out on a limb with the guy who I'm going to hand build in the most. I didn't get to much of him I did that. I'm playing the $5 max entering that thing. So I didn't get to much of him, but I'm going to get to him a lot more in my hand build. I think Fitzpatrick bounces back. He's always been good on this grass. I think that I can take a gamble with him at what I think is going to be, by the end of the day, potentially sub 10% ownership. And that's a big part of why I want to play him. I think you're going to see, similarly low owned Tom Kim. And I'm a big Tom Kim guy. You know that. I'm always going to be overweight Tom Kim. So those are my two standing out. I also think that just because I found so many cheap guys this week, I didn't plan to play much Rory and Cam Young. And I sort of thought, okay, well, give me Rory at first, but I'll hand build all these things out. I'd be leaving like 3K on the table and not to play him in certain lineups. So I may end up getting more. I may end up getting a little exposure to all these guys. I was planning to be well underweight on Henley just because I thought he was going to end up being like 30% owned. And I just don't think that's going to be the case. So I actually will be splashing around here. But the main guys for me to get a little different, just maybe double the field, would be Fitzpatrick and Kim, just because of the low ownership. And hey, you got to spend the money somewhere. We're going to get into some other plays that I know you're going to hate in this 9K range that I've got. I'm 100% sure of it. But I love this 9K range. So I don't mind the idea of doing what, like you said, skipping that 10K plus range if you want to give yourself I don't want to say a cash game type of thing. Just give yourself a better chance at the 6 of 6, and there's no reason anybody 10-1 or over has to win.
Well, and I think in single entries or not big field GPPs, I think there's a lot more value specifically with those style of tournaments to skip that range. Obviously, in like in the big 50K plus entries or whatever, you're gonna have to like, you'd be wrong to not have exposure to the range, but
sure. Absolutely makes sense. What about this 9K range for you? Who's doing it? Because I think that if you're not playing that 10K range, you must have a number of pieces here that you're interested in, or you're not.
Yeah. So I've like I said, I've been kind of needling through it all day, and I ran a bunch of sims, and I did some weird things. So I one of the things I did in my scripting process, just to kind of surface some stuff, was I basically, what I've been doing over the past several weeks is kind of like using SaberSim and just, like I mentioned last week, just putting a minimum 1% ownership on the guys that I like, and then running the sims and kind of seeing what comes up. Right. Mm-hmm. And so this week, because I'm going to play, a much more concentrated, focus of buy-ins, I decided to like run a little experiment, and I did a group, and I built a group of, basically my favorite 15 golfers on the slate, which were all varied from, basically included Russell Henley, but no one else in the 10K range, and then down to like the high 6K range. And, I have some targets. We'll get to them throughout there, but I ran it a couple of times. And one of the things that was just consistently came up every single time, every time I tried to rerun it, redid something, basically Corey Connors was like my top three guys every single time in terms of exposure. So Apparently, I like Corey Connors the most in this range from
Mhm.
9K to 10K. And I think that's kind of shuts the door, and that's kind of how I'm going to build. Off the top of my head, I thought it would be Keith Mitchell, actually.
Mhm.
I mean, first of all, I love Benny On, but I do think he's going to be super popular, and also he does, he can get off, get into trouble off the tee, especially with so much water around the course.
Right.
And also I think, you just, like I was also saying last week, I don't know that I need to have a ton of exposure to the guys that are going to be super overexposed that are in this sort of range. You know what I mean? I'd rather go off the board, but
Mhm.
yeah, by far and away, and everything that I ran so far, and also then ending up in my hand builds, Corey Connors is like my favorite on the slate for this range.
Yeah, I think that for what it's worth, if you're playing cash this week, I think you should be playing Corey Connors. I think that's a really, really good. I think he's going to be really popular, and I think it makes a lot of sense. And I feel like the safety side of it, everything sort of lines up for it to be a decent week for him. I'm in on that. I have exposure to all these guys, so I'm just going to go through the ones that I have. I do look. People say whatever about Eric Cole. Oh, it's chasey because he was in the playoff last year and he's too expensive. All these things. Who else are we playing? I have a decent share of Eric Cole. I'm actually over the field on him, even at pretty decent ownership. I'm over the field on JT Poston, who's also going to be fairly popular. I'm over the field on Chris Kirk is my most over the Chris Kirk and Shane Lowry are my two most over the field. I know we haven't seen them at their best. Kirk won this last year. I think the price is fair enough. I like the idea of getting the ownership at sub 10% on Shane Lowry, potentially right around 10% on Kirk. So those are the ones I'm using the most.
Yeah.
But I do have I'm underweight Minwoo Lee right now. I love Minwoo in general, so it always hurts my heart a little bit to say that. The guy who I've heard a lot about, and I actually did a long deep dive. This is me deep diving golf now. I cannot believe what my life is. But I went into a whole thing about what's going on with Sung J M, and because logically, historically, he would profile perfectly here. He's
Absolutely.
been horrible from tee to green on in the last 5 tournaments. He's really just looked out of sorts, and he's been doing this work on his body where he basically is trying to become stronger and trying to get a little bit more fit. And because of it seems to have messed with his swing is basically the best I can. After digging, after listening to I listened to golf podcasts. Like I can't listen to 5 golf podcasts this week. But
I'm going to NBA game tonight. Look at we're
in like reverse worlds. What's going on here, man? But I like the idea of getting to Sung Jae some. I think he's going to be lower owned just because of recency bias, and I think that Berger at low ownership also piques my interest. So definitely a range where I'm going to be very, very highly exposed. Minwoo, and I think actually, even though I like Connors, I think I'm actually going to be underweight Connors. Those will be and Mitchell. I could see Mitchell getting himself into trouble here too, even though he's a guy I generally like to play. Obviously, he was my highest owned player last week and bounced back after a really rough start. All right, we'll get into the 8K range.
Well, real quick, I just wanted to make one comment because I also like the Berger play. I'm just surprised to see that his ownership has taken up so much. Like I feel like because he was just coming off an injury, he hadn't played for a while, blah blah blah. But I guess everyone's kind of catching on to that. He likes Florida and he's played well here. Mm-hmm. But I like that as well. That Berger, I think, is one of the chalk plays I'm going to have to eat. I don't know so much about.
Do you think he's going to be chalk? I'm not seeing him as being very popular.
That's interesting. I think he's going to be like 20%.
Goldie's got him at 10. Saberson's got him at 4. I would guess around 10. But I just think it's the guys who are around him and they're afraid. But I love it. Look, if you're telling me even if he's 20% and you think you're going to be eating chalk and you happen to get double the field because he's 10%, that works too. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, totally.
I'm very good with that. Actually before, let me start off the 8K range because I actually had a few thoughts on this. I think it's interesting that no one's going to play Denny McCarthy. If there was one place that no one that
putting matters like so much here. It's like they're back on like a legit putting surface. They've been out of California or out here in California where it's terrible putting surfaces everywhere you go, and now you got the best putter on tour coming back, you know. And it honestly, it feels like when I like looked him up the first time, I was like, oh, that seems kind of pricey, but I was like, actually, that I think it's kind of a sneaky underpriced play. You know, he probably should be in the mid nines or something like that at least. But yeah, I love that play. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, he's the one who I'm probably the biggest difference between my ownership and what the field is. I do like Jaeger. I'll be over on him. I'm gonna be I'm gonna be under on Pavon. I'm gonna be under on Straka. And it's not that I don't like these guys. I'll be over on Højgaard for sure. It won't take much, so I'll just take even though this is the worst course thing and all the reasons why not to play this guy because he won last week. He's going to be 5% owned. I'll probably have 8% of Jake Knapp. I'll be well underweight Bo Hostler. I'll be well underweight Alex Noren. I will be a little underweight Luke List. So that's sort of what you can sort of see what I'm doing. My strategy. Okay. And I'm definitely going to be underweight Justin Rose as well, even though I'll have a little bit of exposure. The reason is I like that I like the idea of the 9 and 10K guys with the cheapies who I feel like have every bit as good a chance to win. You even look at you've got golfers at 5K flat who finished in the top 5 of this tournament last year. Now, I'm not saying that you should take everything from that, but that should sort of set off a little bit of an alarm bell. Okay, maybe we do want to play some of these cheaper guys. So that's what I'm doing with this range. What are you doing here?
Yeah, I like McCarthy here. I'm gonna definitely be overweight on this. Jaeger's one of the guys. I mean, he had a great week last week. He's been great, in general. We liked him at the end of last season. Definitely onto him. I also am going to be in, overweight for sure on Pavone this week as well. Just because I think, he's proven to be actually a really great golfer, and why wouldn't he be great here too? And I think, just because he's not as well known in, especially around this range, and people like Straka won here 2 years ago. So, people right around him, I think, are going to take a lot more ownership than he is. And I think he's a better golfer than a lot of the guys around him. So I'm going to be overweight on him. The Højgaard play, Rasmus instead of Nikolai this week, I think is interesting. Yeah, why not? I'll have some of that. The only thing I really was interested to hear you say was that you weren't into Noren. I feel like Noren would be another one of those guys that right around this, especially just being right next to Justin Rose and just dipping down in there to Tom Hoge and stuff like these guys that are had a lot of talk recently. I feel like Noren might be kind of a sneaky play as well that really is no reason why he shouldn't be, as good as or better than anyone right around him in this price range anyway, and might actually lose some ownership compared to the people around him, I think. But yeah, I mean, I like this range in general just because the top of my lineups are not starting with a 10. You know what I mean? So right. I'm kind of all over here. So.
Yeah, so that's really the reason for me is why I didn't get there to more of it, because look, you can't play everybody, whatever. So I'm very high on the top and second tier, and I'm much lower on the 8K tier, just because naturally I have to be if I'm going to do the other stuff.
Sure.
I'll probably force in some hand builds and Justin Rose. It's interesting to me that Justin Rose is looking like, I don't know, the ownerships are all over the map this week for golf. I don't think anybody can get it perfectly. This is going to be a very, very weird week, and you're going to see some surprising ownership. But I was under the impression that Justin Rose was going to be like 25% owned. I'm not so sure that's the case anymore. I just want to throw that out there. So it's, just make sure to update your projections, and even then, don't expect everybody to get it exactly right. It's a tough one.
Yeah.
Okay, 7,500 to 7,900. What do you got here?
So there's another, couple names here that pop out that were like, Olsen last week was $10,100 or something. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, yeah, he didn't have a great week, but he made the cut, and then had a couple. I had him in my best lineup that was running hot there for a second. That we were chasing each other around, with three guys in common. He was my top of that one.
Right.
So I'll be buying back into that for, a $3,000 discount. That's great. Mm-hmm. Also, Brennan Todd, I like this week. I mean, he's another one of these guys who's just, conservative, accurate off the tee. Like if he's gonna, if I need, people to make the cut and not blow up on the water, Brendan Todd's kind of one of those guys. And then also Biz Wadenhood, another, first of all, guy that I've been on for weeks and weeks now, and I haven't really been wrong at all. And also, huge price discount from last week. So I'll be back on him. And then as well as also, again, Eric Van Rooyen, who we both liked last week and we were both right about. And then, didn't have the best weekend or whatever.
You're sneaking past me on the range. You went down to 7,400.
Oh, my bad. Sorry.
No problem. I'm with you on everything you're saying. I just was pointing.
Oh yeah, that's where I am right here. Anyway,
I was like, why don't I have Van Rooyen in here? Because I love Van. I was like, oh. Yeah, no, I like your thoughts a lot. The one who stands out to me the most is I love the Bezadenhood. I think we're seeing this guy really come into his own a little bit, and I think that this is a really strong play here. He's going to have some ownership, so that's fine. I don't mind your Brendan Todd thing. I actually knew you were going to bring him up, and I always have hesitancy to play him, but I probably am going to end up with a little bit of him. I like the Olesen idea a lot. So Bezadenhood and Olesen are my two highest owned in the 7,500 to 8K range. I'm kind of greedy, and I kind of want to get my money back from Mark Hubbard for going 5 over that.
I feel the same way. We both had him in our best lineup in that $88 thing last week.
He shot 4 over. He shot the second worst score after he was totally in contention for the tournament, and then he shoots 4 over on the weekend, and that just took the wind out of my sails. 2 more birdies from him, and I win. That's it. Yep. Or I guess you could say then take away one of the double bogeys. I guess I don't know. Anyway. I like those guys quite a bit. I wanted to ask you about the Ricky thing. I have heard a lot of people talk about playing him, and yet I see no one projected to own him at all.
Yeah, I don't think anyone. I mean, he's not like in good form. He's not put up any signs of doing anything good anytime soon. You know what I mean? Like it's been since the beginning of last season. He won early last season and then blew up and hasn't come back. You know what I mean? Like I'm glad that he's in the field. It's fun to see him, and everyone loves orange, but he's like there's no reason to need to roster him, especially if he's not projected to be owned by it. Like there's just no reason to get there, I think. You know what I mean?
Yeah, fair enough.
One thing I will say about this range also, so in the Sims, okay, so I did it a couple of times. I did it once for a 50K plus entry, because the mini max this week actually is 2,500 for first, but it's also like 60,000 people or something. It's usually like 40,000. So in Saber Sim, the settings are like 10K to 50K entries and then 50K and over, right? So it just changes the variance a little bit. But I ran it also for the large field GPPs, and I ran it I ran 2 sets of it with groups where it's like the first thing I did was I did 30 golfers and I said play at least 5 of them, and then I did another one where I ran a group of 15 golfers and said play at least 4 of them. And just try to see what happened, and did the Sims and stuff. And one thing, so in our projections currently, Doug Gim is like the second best projected value play from the Sheets value score, and so he showed up a bunch. But that makes a lot of sense because he's second under Rory for some reason on the Sheets value score this week. Maybe worth making a note of, but that wasn't as interesting. But what was interesting was that on both of those different grouping things that I ran, Adam Svensson came up like 60% rostered, and he was not in either of the groupings. So that I thought was really interesting, that Saber Sim, out of all the guys I targeted, and I targeted a bunch of, I've already talked about my, skipping the 10K range and, really filling up here between, mid 7s to higher 9s. And it just popped Svensson in all over the place. And he was not in a group, and he was not targeted at all. So I thought that was really interesting. So he's probably someone that you might want to consider if you're trying to get off the board in and around this range.
I currently have 10% Svensson, so I think I'm sort of near the field, but I don't mind that idea at all. All right, let's talk about the 7K to 7,400. We can talk about EVR. Just go ahead, start us off.
Yeah, why not? I mean, come on. He had a great week. Looked great last week. We liked him last week anyway. You know, why wouldn't you like him? And he costs way less. You know, he was like 9,800 last week or something. So a couple thousand, you know, $2,500 discount. Why not? You know, I mean, and this whole range is like there's no one projected over 10% anyway. So who cares what he, you know, ends up at? If no one's, you know, if he's under 10%, you know, give me 20.
Yeah, I'm in on the EVR thing. In general, I tend to like to play him on the, you know, the West Coast swing and stuff like that. You get the windy, you get the South African guys always play well in that kind of those kind of conditions. This is not exactly the same thing, but 7,400. Come on, man. What are we doing? A little bit like somewhat the pricing. I actually when I built my thing, I have some 4,000 left on some lineups in the $5. You know what I mean? Like just there's no reason we have it's just the way it is. If you look at FanDuel, the pricing is totally different. You know what I mean? Like we're just programmed into thinking these are the plays. So he's your favorite from this range. Is that right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. I've got my favorite, and I'm going for a guy who always plays well this part. This is when we get the best out of him. I love Billy Horschel. I don't care what his recent thing is he never plays well on the West Coast. Every time they go back to Florida, same thing. He's always in the top 15, top 20, super cheap, 7K. Sign me up for the Billy Ho. I think in this tournament, actually, we once paid him like 10-5 for him. I swear it was like, I think I did, I should say. I can't say anybody else did, but so I'm in on the Billy Horschel. This is not a range where I went that crazy, except for to point out that I think Maverick McNeely's price is just completely egregious. That's the one actually that stands out. He's playing much, much, much better. And the odd part is like, I actually like him enough for this course. I just, in general, the issue with him in the past was him not hitting the ball. He's been hitting the ball this year. I'm big on McNeely. I'm gonna absolutely play that one. So the EVR, the McNeely, and the Horschel are my three favorites in this range. I'm trying to look at who else I have any exposure to. Nobody else above 5% for me. Hisatsun is the next one at 7%. But I really like the Horschel, and I definitely will have a good amount of Horschel both in my hand builds and probably like 20% in the $5 as well. I like
the Horschel play too. I mean, he hasn't had great form lately, but I feel like if he's going to bounce back, it'll be here. Also with McNeely, I actually saw him in your playbook on Discord earlier, and I was like, oh, he's in the field. I forgot.
Yeah.
So something I'm going to have to readdress and pay attention to for sure.
Yeah, and to that note, also, I also will not quit Doug Gim now. He's playing too well.
Yeah, I just, the thing it is, and he projects well on our projections, and he's, projected to be high, in the teens, which is well above anyone in the range on multiple different sites. And because of that, I just think I'm out. Like, I don't know. I just don't think I need Gim at 7K if he's going to be 15% owned. You know what I mean?
I don't think he's going to be. He might be. He could be. This is the one. He's one of the ones where I've seen places say 4% and I've seen places say 20%. I cannot figure out what the hell's what. I would guess that it's probably somewhere in between.
Yeah.
Which is still some pretty significant ownership.
Yeah, definitely. Especially for bottom of the. I mean, he doesn't have anyone 3 or 4 above him has more radio time than he does. So it's kind of odd, but see what happens.
Yeah. And instead of doing the 6, so I think there is like legit plays in the 6K range. And I guess I'll start off with my guys down here. The one I'm forcing into my hand builds, because I literally tried everything and I could not get Saberson to give me any of them. They would not let me play him. Even if I put a percentage, they did not want me playing Thomas Dietrich. Speaking of guys whose pricing is jarring, Thomas Dietrich.
He was 10K last week. He was 10K last week.
Yeah, exactly. And then I've got Ben Griffin.
Yep.
Carson Young. I'm just always going to be over the field on those two guys. If I'm multi-entering, they're just always going to pop for me.
Yep.
I'm no longer going to play Johnny Vegas. I was going to, but then he withdrew, so I decided it was probably best not to play him.
Oh, he withdrew. Oh, I didn't see that yet.
The woo-woo didn't get there for me last year, so last week, but it came close. So
Yeah,
I'm going back
was,
to the
yeah.
woo-woo.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I got we had the Dylan Woo, who just blew up on Friday and then was awesome on blew up on Saturday and was awesome on Sunday after going into the weekend 9 under, ended up shooting even for the weekend, +5 and -5 in the last two days. Those are my main ones down here. I'm just looking to see what else I programmed in. Chan Kim. I have him double-digit owned. I have CT Pan. I actually have a lot of CT Pan. I'm going to I'm going to take some gambling shots.
That's interesting. I don't know.
And he also played. He played great last week. It's not going to matter because no one's going to play him anyway, so you don't have to worry about chasing anything.
Yeah.
And those were the main ones for me down in the 6K range. I have some sub 6K, but I'll wait till you go through your guys.
No, we're 1 for 1 on that. No more, no less. So exactly the same with you on that one.
Yep. All right. Down in the sub 6K range. Oh yeah. Again, you got to get the woo-woo lineups in. They're gonna hit at some point. I'm telling you. All right. So there are some shocking prices where if you would have, I'm just gonna say this, like if you would have told me Joseph Bramlett was going, I mean, like not that I think that he's like the greatest golfer in the world, but like I just think I'm just like
he's not.
Just sort of stood out to me. I'm just like. He stood out to me with him, but it also stood out to me with Sam Ryder. And then the biggest question I had for you, Sam Ryder's been terrible lately, but has played really well here in the past. Andrew Novak, I'm just starting to think maybe I have to have my attention up a little bit. He's played too well for me not to pay a little bit of attention when he's 5,900 and unowned. So he's one for me. I do like Ben Martin. I think he finished like 10th here last year, and he's 5,800.
Finished 5th here last year.
5th here last year. Okay, well, yeah, there you go. It's 5th here last year. Yeah. I'm intrigued by the Campillo, but I'm probably not going to do it this week. You know me, I have to have.
Yeah, I'm intrigued as well.
Yeah, I think he might be like. I mean, he's just coming over, and he was dominating over the VP Tour. No. Like, I think that there's something there.
Yeah, but I think he's also, first of all, he's wild off the tee. So this is a pretty bad week. Probably a pretty bad course.
Sure, but at the same time, we're talking about these ridiculous prices that you could put some rounds together. But yes, I hear you. I hear you.
Yeah.
I'm just throwing out a few more because I did force some exposure. I am going to force in some Joel Dahmen at 5,500. Again, look, these are 5K plays and stuff that I just think are interesting enough to keep me in there. And no one's going to play basically any of these guys except for Parker Cootie, who I will be overweight on, but I expect him to have a little bit of ownership. He's 5,100. You played him last week. He's been playing much, much better than his brother. Remember, you want to play Parker, not Pearson, even though Pearson is supposed to be the better golfer. We have not seen any evidence of that on the PGA Tour. So Parker Cootie would sort of round out my list for me. Oh, and I do have I have like 6% of Ben Taylor at 5K flat.
Oh, interesting. That's a weird one. Yeah, for me, I like first of all, I do like the Andrew Novak play. I think he's actually in my, off the board targets for like, to roster once in a single entry or something like that. You know what I mean? Also, so, I don't think there's a whole lot we have to worry about in this range. If we're looking at, guys that have been a lot higher priced that also have good history here, you might want to take a look at Matthew Neesmith, but his form has been terrible lately. There's no real reason to make any serious considerations about him. I do kind of like this week Zach Johnson. Just, going back to, hey, I similar to like last week with Ryan Palmer, it's like some of these older guys, they played it a bunch and, they know the course and they're doing okay now. He just had a little screen time at the Waste Management. I don't know if you saw that clip or not.
Yeah, I did. That was pretty funny.
But, he's playing, he's out there, like, this is a course that he's played a ton. He's got the knowledge to play it well and conservatively, like so maybe a little Zach Johnson at 5,500, which I think is a huge, great price for him. And then also, again, same as actually last week, who actually had a pretty good week and hit some great shots and got some good screen time as well was Patrick Harrington at 5,400. So, you might be able to get a little bit of a discount there. Other than that, for me, I don't, the Parker Cootie play, but I think, I think you're right. I think he's actually going to get a little bit of ownership this week. And the only place I'm really interested to play in would be those sneaky, like, single non, max enter tournaments or something like that. And I just don't think that you have to get there this week because it is, again, I mean, in theory, this is supposed to be a much more difficult course than it was last week. And there's a ton of water all over the place, right? So all of these things we haven't really seen recently. And that's where you get those, massive scores. And that's just, I mean, it can just ruin a lineup. It's like you just don't want to have, if you're going heavy, I guess it depends on how you do construction. You know what I mean? If you're spread out all over the place, then have all of these people. But if you're really trying to build like a core and go heavy on that core, then you just don't need to get to some of the, guys that could actually just ruin a beautiful 5 guys and then one guy that, shoots a +12 on Monday or on Thursday. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, that's a concern. I got some NBA news that I've got to go edit it in a little bit. So we're going to play the game. We're going to jump over to it. We're going to talk about, you got to make your pick. Who's going to win this tournament, Kenny?
All right.
Any range, doesn't have to be.
I'm gonna say Benny on.
Ooh, okay. I am going to take the chalk one because that means I'm gonna have to play some Benny on. I'm stuck because I want to say Tom Kim, but I'm just gonna say Rory because I think he has the best chance to. And Cheats always says that to me with these games. The guys who he never plays, he's like, well, that guy's the guy who's gonna win though. I was like, oh, why do you play him? All right, let's go down into this. So under 10K to top 5. And you got to use another one other than the first.
Sure. One. Under 10K to top 5. Well, I'm going straight to Corey Connors.
That's what I thought you were going to say. That makes sense. So you've got Connors. I'm just looking at my ownership, so I make sure I get my right guy in here. I'm going to say we get a bounce back out of Shane Lowry this week.
Okay.
I've got a lot of them. I understand it doesn't feel great to a lot of people, but I'm going to say Shane Lowry.
I mean, he's had a great history here as well. So,
yeah. And I got to love a guy who somehow manages to be that fat while walking as much as these golfers have to walk. I don't even understand it. How is it possible? If I walked that much, are you kidding me? I'd be shredded. Under 9K to top 10.
Oh, I'm taking Matthew Pavon.
Matthew Pavon. Okay. Oh, you're gonna force me to play some of the guys I was gonna try to avoid, but I don't mind. I mean, I like it. I just was trying to get off some of the chalk. Top 10. Who did I have as my biggest one here? I'm gonna say Steven Yeager goes up there again.
I like that too.
All right. Under 8K, or wait, no, under 9K to top 20. Is that right? No, under 8K to top 20.
Under 8K to top 20. Oh, well, I guess we can just flip a coin and who takes Bezzy and who takes EVR, I guess is kind of the answer, right? I don't know.
I'm taking Bezzy, so I don't know.
I'll take EVR then.
Okay, there we go. Even if you said him, I was taking Bezadenhood. I really like him this week. I think he actually is a reasonable odds to take a shot in betting on him.
Love it.
Under 7K to just make the cut. This is you've got a wide range of guys to choose from here.
Yeah. Under 7K to make the cut.
Oh my God, I forgot to mention him already. Who the guy who I'm going to say? Go ahead. Sorry.
I mean, it seems wrong to not say Dietrich, so I'll just say Dietrich.
All right. The guy I forgot to mention who I'm very high on is Robbie McIntyre. And that was the one on 6,500 that I like quite a bit. All right. Over 9K to miss the cut.
Okay. Over 9K to miss the cut. I'm going to go with Minwoo Lee.
That seems like it's a really good answer. And because of it, I'm sorry that it's your guy that you picked, but I'm going to say Benny on, and just to be off the board. But so we've got Lee and on.
Right.
Unfortunately, two guys I actually love to bet on in general, but I am not on the Lee thing that much this week. I definitely have a little bit of Benny on, but since you put him on there, I'm going to have more.
I mean, the only guy that's got a worse accuracy stat over 9K than Minwoo Lee is Benny on. So
there you go. Certainly logical. Watch them go out. They're going to come 1-2 now this week. So now I've got to get Benny on.
Right.
You get the Benny on, the Minwoo Lee, and the Woo Woo, and you got all the money coming. All right, buddy. Well, have a great time at the Laker game. The Lakers and Clippers.
Clipper game.
All right. And yeah, let's enjoy it and go tell Russ to score some fantasy points tonight, because I need to win a tournament.
All right, I'll yell at him. He'll hear me too.
All right, sounds good, buddy. Have a good one. Thanks so much for being here. Good luck to everybody this week, and we'll see you in the Discord.